should be great.
Don't worry, it'll be fine, man.
Sit back so you're taking.
Yeah, for my reel.
Yeah, for your reel.
Yeah.
Rolling, right?
All right, so if you just want to start off, just talk a little bit about the film itself and what drew you to the project.
Okay, so I initially read about the story in a magazine on a flight between New York and London, and by the time I got off the plane, I felt that it was such an intriguing story. It was a story, it's a great heist story, but it was also very unusual in terms of who the perpetrators were. You know, they weren't your usual suspects. This was a group of young, pretty well-educated men who were from good families, had lots of opportunity. It seemed quite odd that they would have, that they would ever get involved with an art theft, especially one as audacious as this. And so that was really the first thing. It was just an intriguing story as to the why of it. And I began to communicate with the real guys who at that point were in prison. And the letters that came back were very unexpected. You know, their motivations weren't what I had anticipated, and that turned it from a great story into a kind of an amazing one.
Yeah, and then what was the moment that clicked to you? Because it's so unique, the structure and how you incorporate the real-life interviews. At what point of the scripting process, or did you go into thinking this is how you want the story to be told? Did you realize that this concept can work for this film?
I guess it was early on that I felt that it was pretty important to the fact that it was a true story was so most of the time we go into the movies and it says based on a true story, but you don't really, then you sort of feel like they've probably wildly exaggerated it. It's probably massively fictionalized. This story didn't need a whole lot of exaggeration or fictionalizing, and it was really important to me that the audience is constantly reminded that it's a true story. And there was something about the real guys and how honest and compelling that they were that I thought, well, if there's a way to keep them in the movie, maybe we can find a whole new way of telling a true story that you haven't seen before. And I think the effect of that is that you watch it in a different way because you're so invested, you're very deeply connected to them, and you're not in movie world where the consequences of people's actions don't really affect you. In this, you've kind of got skin in the game, I think.
Totally. Then as a director, you talk about how, you're trying to get, as a narrative director, your actors to act and tell the story well. As a documentarian, which you also have that hat in this film, you don't necessarily want your subjects to act. So I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about directing this film, how you approach those two different aspects of it.
Yeah, they are different hats that you wear. People say the same principles apply to documentary and fiction, but the reality is that, with documentary, you're just trying to capture the truth. You don't really have to engineer it. You're trying to be as kind of unintrusive as possible and just let things play out. Whereas, with fiction filmmaking, you as the director have to kind of manufacture the truth. It's my job to make sure that what the actors are doing feels really honest and really truthful. So it's different, with the doc stuff, I just wanted to make sure that what we captured felt real and natural, and that the real guys seemed genuine and unscripted, which they were. And then then that's done, and then you just put that aside, and then we went and shot a heist movie. And the heist movie was really about casting the right people and who have the essence of those characters, and then kind of building this ensemble and letting those actors do what they do best, which is kind of bring the things that I'd written to life. And I hadn't written a screenplay before, and it wasn't until they showed up and started doing this thing that they do so well that I was like, wow, this is going to work, and it's going to work pretty well.
And then could you talk about the casting process in general, how you kind of came upon each boy briefly?
Sure, yeah. Casting the movie was a little like how you would kind of put together a criminal gang, maybe. You need your like charismatic leader, sort of Danny Ocean type. And I found Evan. He came in to audition for Warren and was just, it was like job done. Call off the search, and he was great. And then so once you have your kind of your gang leader, then we went out to cast the different characters, and that's how I did it. I kind of approached it in the way, the next person to come into the gang is Spencer, played by Barry Keoghan, and there was a point where we probably could have cast the biggest names of this age group, and that wasn't really what I wanted for the film. I didn't want people who you'd recognize from other big movies. I wanted a group of young, up-and-coming actors who felt quite authentic. They're not, they look real. They're all handsome guys, but they have a very natural, kind of real look to them, and that was really important, that you feel like you can relate to them. They're like you and I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then speaking of how relatable the characters are, I think one big thing with me was watching the film. There's so many just little quirks that you could tell were about, like, the mannerisms between the real guys and the actors, and even like the tattoo that Warren has. I mean, most films wouldn't have a detail like that. So was that your own research, or was that more the actors talking to the real life guys, or did you try to keep it separate?
I tried to keep the actors separate from the real guys
They just have such a weight to them that their counterparts do.
Yeah, I felt like I didn't want the actors and the real guys to spend too much time together before filming, because I mean, if you're an actor, it's really appealing. It's like, there's this real guy that I'm playing. Mm-hmm. Why can't I go and spend a week with him and then learn how he moves, how he talks? But that wasn't really the purpose. The guys were now 10 years older than when the incident happened. Mm-hmm. Most of that 10 years was spent in prison. They're different people. They were going to be very changed from how they were at the time. And I felt that it was important that the actors could find their own version of these characters without feeling like they had the responsibility to portray someone that they knew and became friends with. And people want to control their portrayal, don't they? If I'm portraying you, you're probably going to go, well, don't make me out to be too much of a dick,
Of course. Mm-hmm. And then I was talking to the Evan and Blake about this, how the disguises and how that worked. Mm-hmm. So, who by the end of it was able to just put on the makeup and go?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, that is when you think, oh my God, this is my job. I'm basically a grown adult, playing, dress up. Mm-hmm. And we had, I had this idea that I wanted this whole slightly 70s kind of vibe to it. I felt like, they should be dressed as if they'd gone and raided their grandfather's closet. I was mindful of movies like Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, where mm-hmm. they will have this kind of sort of slightly kind of odd old man costume. The idea was that, I think the idea that the real guys had was that, people don't tend to question old people. They don't tend to feel threatened by elderly people. Mm-hmm. And there's a line in the movie where Spencer says, being old is the closest thing to being invisible. Mm-hmm. That old people tend to get ignored a lot, and so who's going to suspect a group of elderly men of being robbers? And but there was a lot of makeup involved and some prosthetics, and there's a scene where we shoot Evan doing the whole makeup process, and it was kind of extraordinary. He'd sat in the chair having it done to him for like 3 weeks, and then by the end he was able to do it himself like that. It was amazing.
Awesome. Cool. I think that's really it for
good work,
our
Ryan.
generics. Yeah, thanks.
Cool,
I mean,
mate.
personally, I could ask you about